Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So if you're anything like me, you were probably left rather dumbstruck this week when we all saw in the news how the governor of Texas declared that the entire state would be 100% open in the midst of the devastating pandemic, which continues to rage on and takes thousands of lives every day. And like me, you probably had the thought of what kind of moral depravity is this? What are we witnessing? How could people do this in the face of what is so obvious? I mean, Texas, Dafka, that's a state that just went through a deep freeze, an incredible catastrophe. And now the governor is putting more people at immediate risk for their health in this unbelievably reckless action. So what is going on? I would like to submit that what you're seeing happening by the governor of Texas is what the Bible means when it talks about idolatry. And I want to explain what that means. You know, do you ever wonder why God is so intent on stamping out all idolatry in the Bible? Do you ever wonder why God seems to be so unbelievably merciless at removing every trace of idolatry in the land of Israel? What is going on? Now, you might be surprised to hear me make some sort of link between a governor declaring a state opening and bowing down to statues. What's the connection? Well, what I want to teach today is that idolatry is not so much about statues, but it's rather about a fatal flaw in the human condition, which, if we are not careful, can lead us down a path to lose our moral compass completely. It's not like the governor of Texas doesn't understand that there are thousands of people in his state dying from COVID. It's just that he has fallen prey to an avodah zarah, to an idolatry that has robbed him of his heart and of his better judgment and of his conscience in the face of the obvious. And I talk about this today not to simply point the finger and have us all shake our heads at the governor of Texas. What I want to do today is to show the fatal flaw that the governor of Texas has fallen for is something that is possible in you and in me. We're all equally capable of idol worship, even to this day. Now, the most famous moment in the Golden Calf episode is the moment, of course, when Moses comes down and he's got the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments and he smashes the tablets. And the thing that I always think of course, is the movie when Charlton Heston picks up the tablets and he says, "Those who will not live by the law will die by the law." And he throws down the tablets and it smashes right on the idol. And there's animated lightning and fireworks and pyrotechnics. And everyone's going, you know, it doesn't exactly describe it that way in the Torah. But it is a shocking moment in the Torah, perhaps for different reasons, though. It's a shocking moment in the Torah because Moses is holding these tablets written with the finger of God. We know he has an anger management problem, but this seems like a doozy in terms of blasphemous, iconoclastic behavior. So what gives? Has he done a grave sin? We're left wondering what's happening in that moment. And that's why the rabbis in the Talmud make a point of showing us that Moses didn't do the wrong thing in smashing the tablets written with the finger of God. In fact, later in the parsha, it says that Moses should go back up and carve 2 new tablets, like the first ones, Asher Shibarta, that you broke, God says. And the rabbis say, don't read it simply as Asher Shibarta, that you broke. Read it as God saying, Yasher Koach Shibarta. Yasher Koach, Moses, that you smashed the tablets of the 10 Commandments. Now, what's going on? Why would the rabbis want to make sure we know that God is giving Moses a great big attaboy for smashing the tablets of the 10 Commandments in the face of idolatry? Well, I would submit that what's happening here is the Torah and our Jewish tradition wants to use this episode to teach us what idolatry is, what it's all about, and what we can do to prevent idolatry. And in order to do that, we have to think, of course, first about the context of the story of the golden calf. We know the Israelites have just come through Mitzrayim, a land of idols galore all over the place, people bowing down to idols. We know that. And then there's this other element in the story of the going out of Egypt, the element that is called the Erev Rav, which means the mixed multitude that also left Mitzrayim with the Israelites. So the mixed multitude is not just Jewish people, not just Israelites, but it refers to all other kinds of peoples who were maybe enslaved or who just wanted to leave Egypt. So it includes some Egyptians. And all of these people didn't have monotheism. They had idolatry and they brought idols with them. So what's happening here, we're having sort of a seething possibility, a seething potential of idolatry boiling just beneath the surface. And all it takes is one crisis to make the idolatry explode amongst the Israelites. And of course, you have a crisis. It says, Vayara Am ki boshesh Moshe, that the people saw that Moses was tarrying and coming down, and they were afraid, and they went to Aaron, and velo yadanu ma hayalo. We don't know what happened to him, they say. And they demand that Aaron make the calf. Now, many in the rabbinic tradition blame the going to Aaron and demanding the calf, not on the Israelites, but on the Erev Rav, because they weren't Jewish in the first place, and they liked their idols, and they demanded the idol. I don't know about you, but that to me sounds like a projected back bigotry and xenophobic Jews or whatever, trying to say the Jews are not capable of this, and that only the non-Jews amongst us were the ones that led us to idolatry. Doesn't sit well with me and a lot of people in the Jewish tradition, that explanation. And that's why I really love the teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who says, no, don't read the Erev Rav as non-Jews who were with the Israelites, but read the definition of the word Erev Rav. The word Erev is related to the word Arev, which means mix up, and Rav means many. So you can read it as the mixed up within the many. Right? So what he says, Rabbi Nachman explains, is that within the Israelite crowd, there arose this group of people who were very confused by their fear. And there were some leaders that came up amongst them and led them through lies and manipulations and distortions, and led them and whipped them up into a frenzied mob that made all of them choose idolatry. Echoes of the Capitol Hill mob, right? How people can do that. They can whip people up into incredibly sinful behavior, people who otherwise had not been sinful in the past. And in fact, on this, Rabbi Nachman says that this type of duplicity takes place in every generation, for there are always people like those in the Erev Rav who have their own interest at heart, yet who present themselves as concerned guardians of the people. So what does this begin to teach us about idolatry? Idolatry is not about the statue. It's not actually about the calf. It's about the conditions that created the calf. It's about how there was confusion, and then some people owned the confusion and became leaders and led others to sin. In fact, there's a very famous midrash about the golden calf, that it says that originally the mob approached not Aaron, but a man named Hur, and demanded that Hur be the one to build the golden calf. And Hur refused to do so. So the mob murdered him. They utterly destroyed him, murdered him. And then the mob came onto Aaron and said, you build this calf, or we'll do the same thing to you that we did to Hur, which is a very powerful midrash. And in some ways that explains how somebody as lofty as Aaron could do this. He was afraid that he was going to be murdered by the angry mob. Again, all of this comes to show that this is the essence of idolatry. It's those who whip up people into a mob. That's idolatry. But it doesn't end there. I want to come back to the image of Moses smashing the tablets of the Ten Commandments. There's a long tradition going back thousands of years in Judaism that when God gave the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, God had no intention of having those tablets just stay there on tablets of stone. As it says in the book of Proverbs, write them kitvam beluach libecha. Write them on the fleshy tablets of your heart. That's where the Ten Commandments really belong. The two tablets represent the two sides of our heart. In other words, the totality of our heart. That's where those tablets belong. And so when Moses smashed the tablets, he is giving off a metaphor of a broken heart. in witness of idolatry before us. When we let fear and manipulation steer us into ideas that are damaging and violent, then this hardens our own hearts. When we fix on ideas about ourselves and others and God and the world, this not only turns our hearts to stone and ossifies our hearts, but it smashes our hearts. That's what Moses was teaching and smashing those tablets. It breaks our heart, it breaks our humanity, and it breaks our potential to create a better society. So what is idolatry? Is it statues of stone or gold or gems? No. Idolatry is a condition of the human mind. That's idolatry. Every time we assert our opinion and deny the validity of anyone else's opinion, that's idolatry. That's an ossification of the mind. Every time we allow fear to narrow our perspectives and to distort truth and facts, that is idolatry. It's a hardening of the mind. Every time we go into denial rather than face truth or science, whether it be in science or denying the reality of scientists, or it's denying realities in our own lives or in our relationships, this too is idolatry of the mind. Idolatry, really, to put simply, it's every time we allow ourselves to completely be taken in by our own thoughts and beliefs and push away the thoughts and beliefs of anyone or anything else. To be a truly wise, a truly mature human being is somebody who doesn't believe anything that you think. That's the challenge. We automatically believe everything we think. But most of us don't do that. Most of us take the more cowardly path. We want to be right. We want to be right simply because we feel better when we're right about something. It doesn't matter what other people think. That's idolatry. It's cowardice to want to be right because we're afraid of what it means to be wrong. It's cowardice to take on beliefs that we might pick up from the internet or from other people simply because it makes us feel better about our ideas of ourselves that we already had in the first place. That's why Moses smashed the tablets, to teach us that we have to have a greater degree of courage to overcome this tendency of the mind to harden around our own ideas. There's only one way to overcome idolatry in every generation and in every lifetime, and that is to live in a state of constant doubt, to live and become comfortable living in uncertainty. It's to accept that we cannot know everything. It's to question everything and never believe things simply because it makes us feel better about ourselves. This is what I taught with the Para Aduma. We did crazy things because we forgot to check our own arrogance of believing our own ideas. And so Moses smashed the tablets to teach us perhaps the most powerful lesson of all. Even the 10 Commandments can become an idol. Even religion itself, Judaism, is turned into an idol by many, many Jewish people, as does the land of Israel gets turned into an idol by many Jewish people. And you turn anything into that way, then it can become a weapon of destruction of others and of our own souls. But there's a great promise that if we can finally get over believing everything that we think, if we can finally embrace this uncertainty, then a great healing can happen. The hardened parts of our hearts can reanimate and become flesh again, and can become truly the 10 Commandments written on the fleshy tablets of our hearts, so long as we don't constantly seek out the simplistic and pat ways of looking at our lives. Because when we do that, there's a great gift that comes. And that gift is the gift of knowing that we have each other, that we can turn to one another to do what we can humbly, to work together to build a more safe and loving society for every one of us, because we can all finally recognize that we're all equally wise. We're all equally capable of wisdom, that is to say. We're all equally capable of goodness. You know, that governor of Texas, he was bowing down to idols. He was bowing down to idols of his own cowardice. He was bowing down to idols of his own need to find the approval of his constituents. He was bowing down to the idolatry of his own capitalism that led him to put dollar signs above public health and safety and what is the right thing to do. And before we condescend simply to him, remember, we all have the golden calves of our own minds. We all have sacred cows of our own belief systems that we're afraid to question. So what we have to do in response when we see this is start looking at our own beliefs. What are we clinging to because we're afraid to see another perspective on that? That's a hard job to do, but I promise you, if we can do that, if we can overcome the idols of our own minds, and we all have them, there are no exceptions. If we can overcome the idols of our own mind, we indeed can heal our hearts. And may we heal our hearts, find those 10 commandments that live truly there to guide us to make this world a blessing. Shabbat shalom, everybody.